Hello and welcome to Advanced Mathematics 1, Unit 8, Part 2, Solving Quadratics Using Roots. So this is a second method that you can use certain quadratic equations with. By the end of the lesson, you'll be able to do what we said we were going to do, which is solve quadratic equation using square roots. Main concept for this lesson is that if x squared is d, then when d is greater than 0, x is plus or minus the square root of d. This is the important part because up till now we were dealing with Pythagorean theorem when we were solving for x squared, and we only looked at the positive because it was side lengths. But there are actually two answers, and they are both positive and the negative value of the square root of d. When d is 0, obviously x is 0 because the square root of 0 is 0. And when d is less than 0, you can't take a square root of negative numbers. At least, well, you can, but we won't be getting into that for a while. But basically, there are no real solutions, which is true of all of that. To solve, what you're going to do is you're going to isolate the square term and then take the square root of both sides. And then you will finish solving for the variable if necessary. Sometimes you'll be done after that first step, and sometimes you'll have multiple other steps to do. So let's just jump into our examples. So basically we want to isolate our square term and kick everything else to the other side of the equation. So I'm going to move that 371 to the other side, and I get 4x squared equals 29 plus 371. 29, 371, oops, that's always, there we go, is 400. All right, now we will go ahead and divide both sides by 4, and I get x squared equals 100. Now I can take the square root of both sides. So when I take the square root of x squared, I get x. When I take the square root of 100, I get plus or minus the square root of 100. Which is 10. So you can leave your answer like this as plus or minus 10, or you can write it out. You can write 10 and negative 10. It does not matter either way. All right, for number 2, we have something on the outside. So we're going to want to get rid of that thing on the outside first, even though it's not going to divide evenly. So when we do that, we're left with x plus 1 quantity squared. And we're going to leave this the fraction, 16 over 9. Now we're going to take the square root of both sides. When we take the square root of x plus 1 squared, we get x plus 1. And then we get plus or minus the square root of 16 over 9. Now, we want to simplify that as much as possible first before we start moving things. So I'm going to leave this x plus 1 here. The square root of 16 is 4. The square root of 9 is 3. So this is plus or minus 4/3. Now I'm going to subtract 1 from both sides. So I have negative 1 plus or minus 4/3. So you're going to have two answers here. So negative 1 plus 4/3 is negative 4/3 is 1/3. And negative 1 minus 4/3 is negative 2 1/3. Or you can write it as an improper fraction and write it as negative 7/3. Your choice. All right, in example 3, again, we're going to start by isolating the square term. So we subtract 11 from both sides. And we get negative 5x squared equals 16 minus 11, which would be 5. Now we're going to divide both sides by negative 5. And we get x squared equals negative 1. That's a negative number. That means I can't take the square root of it because it's an irrational number, square root of negative 1. And so we don't know how to deal with that yet. We will later. But we're going to take this, we're just going to say, okay, you can't do that with real numbers. So that means there are no solutions. So no solution. All right, and example 4. It's kind of all mixed up. I'm going to move the 30 over here. It doesn't matter what side things are on. We'll turn it around a little bit. So 19 minus 30 is negative 11. I mean, you can turn that around if you want, but it's not really necessary. So we're going to divide both sides by negative 5. And I get negative 11 over negative 5 is just 11 over 5. Now we'll take the square root of both sides. We get plus or minus the square root of 11 over 5. So I can't leave my answer with a square root in the denominator. So I'm going to multiply square root of 11 over square root of 5 times the square root of 5 over square root of 5. And I get the square root, still got the plus or minus, on top of 55. And on the bottom, I just have 5. And that's my final answer, is plus or minus the square root of 55 all over 5. And there we go. That's all there is for today. I will see you next time.